This symbol is one of the most recognizable icons in pop culture. Everyone knows Superman. He is the blueprint for superheroes. He is the superhero. We wouldn't have gotten the plethora of superhero media we consume today. That said, why doesn't he have a video game?
It's criminal that, to this day, Superman struggles to find a place in the video game world. Apart from appearing in ensemble games, the Man of Steel never really had a game to himself where he truly shines as a character, unlike Batman and Spider-Man. And it's not for lack of trying. Speaking of Batman, we also made a video for Arkham Knight's 10th anniversary right here. There have been many attempts at flinging Superman into the video game world, but unfortunately, none stuck the landing.
With nearly 90 years of existence, you'd think they would have figured out the formula by now. But as you probably know, they haven't. So, how come there are no good Superman games?
To understand why it's nearly impossible to make a good Superman game, let's go through with Superman's video gameography. Sure, let's go with that. Superman has had a rough ride in the video game world. There are more misses than hits, and if I'm being honest, the hits were more like, good enough. Superman's first outing was the 1979 Atari game, and it's an Atari game. There's not much else to it. Then there were a couple of arcade side-scrolling beat-em-ups that were more or less generic games in that genre, made to capitalize on the character's popularity. We'll talk more about those games later.
Then there was Superman: The New Adventures, or most infamously known, Superman 64. It was the first Superman game presented in 3D graphics, and suffice to say that it was a terrible, terrible game. Graphics were abysmal compared to the titles of the time, and the controls were absolute garbage. Look at this! It is notoriously known as one of the worst games ever made. Not in the genre, but of all time. That's how bad it was.
Then we got two other games, Superman Shadow of Apocalypse and Superman the Man of Steel, which didn't take off either. One game though managed to break through the barrier of awful games. Not quite all the way, but it made a crack. And that is Superman Returns, the video game. For a cash grab tie-in, it had a good foundation for what a Superman game could be. Superman is not given a health bar, but Metropolis gets it instead. As Superman, your job is to protect the city from waves of enemy attacks, while at the same time facing off against some of his classic villains. Not only is Superman indestructible, but you can also use his heat vision, freeze breath, super strength, and perhaps the best part of the game? Flight! Boy, did this game get the flight right. The only downside of this game is the lack of content, because after fighting all the enemies and battling villains, there's not much else to do. It also doesn't help that the plot is non-existent, and most of it is a straight-up copy of the movie's last half. In the end, Superman Returns, the video game, is just another, good enough. Looking at the list of Superman games, the common denominator is that Superman isn't Superman. By that, I mean he's given constraints. With every iteration, he is limited within the confines of video game systems and a genre. That's why it feels impossible to make a Superman game because you don't let Superman be Superman. Take for instance the 1992 Superman game for the Sega Genesis. The 16-bit visuals and the music were praised, but it was heavily criticized for not utilizing Superman's powers in the game. Apart from super strength that more or less looks like regular punching, you get heat vision and this spinning tornado move. But you can only use these powers in the flying sections or when prompts pop up respectively. You're just man at this point. It's just a throwaway generic beat-em-up game. 2 years later, Superman fared a little better with the death and return of Superman for the SNES and Sega Genesis. The game did a great job adapting the storyline of the same name, even incorporating some of the comic book panels. Unlike the 1992 game, you now have a storyline to follow and other characters with unique abilities, but not unique enough, unfortunately. There's some form of variety, but Superman's other powers remain unutilized. The gameplay and level design are once again pretty generic for the genre, with not much else to add. At least in this one, you can fly, but still a game that's good enough. All of these games tell us one thing: Superman is not Superman. He's always been constricted, not allowed to be powerful. The audience, and probably the devs too on some level, have this misconception that an all-powerful being like Superman would be boring if put in a video game setting. I think having these conversations over the years, people would forget that there have been titles with protagonists who are canonically OP. Kratos might just be the most fitting example here. He's done some superhuman feats in all the games, and oh, he literally becomes the god of war. Yeah, no one bats an eye whenever a basic enemy hits or shoots him with some sticks with pointy ends. Let's not look further away from the superhero genre. We're all familiar with Batman's no-kill code, but do you think dropping on top of a thug from a 5-story building wouldn't leave that dude smeared on the sidewalk? With Spider-Man's amazing spider sense, how can he still get hit by a brute? How are these dudes not in cardiac arrest after taking a high-voltage punch from Miles? Do you think the Punisher can take down Thor with his pea shooter? Can Chris Redfield truly punch his way in a fight against Galactus?
Doesn't baseball bat stand a chance against Omega Babes?
Yeah. That's what I thought. I think we can put this argument to bed. Let's put on our suspension of disbelief goggles and embrace the idea that they're in a video game. Having Superman nerfed throughout a game is just no fun. That's why we have the phrase power fantasy. We need some form of escape from our normal lives and fulfill our wishes to be powerful. Let's not overthink this. With the technology available, the benefit of hindsight, and just a little imagination, I think DC will be able to produce a Superman game that perfectly encapsulates his world like they did with Batman with the Arkham series. It's high time we open our minds to the possibilities that there's still hope for Superman. Now that we've identified the problem, how can we make a good Superman game? It's simple. Let him be Superman. If you buy a Superman game, you'd want to be Superman. Superman Returns almost had it right, so I think we can build off their blueprint. I think it's important to make the game open world, but open it up to a wider universe. You can set the game in Metropolis, but there are other places in the DC universe he can visit, like Smallville, the Fortress of Solitude, or Apocalypse. Superman can even drop by Gotham to lend Batman a hand or fly by Central City to help Flash with a disaster. If they want to, they can even have Superman fly off to space and visit the Watchtower, just to say hi to whoever's on monitor duty that day. Of course, you'd need Superman to fly around in an open world game, and we already know that Superman Returns did a spectacular job incorporating flight in the game. But unexpectedly, you have another game that did a great job. Or should I say, amazing.
Say that again?
Spider-Man 2 on the PS5 improved its traversal mechanics by finally including the web wings. You're technically gliding with it, but after playing the game for hundreds of hours, it feels more or less like flying. I found myself gliding more than web swinging, but it's even more fun when you combine it with web swinging and freestyling. I'd sometimes abandon missions and get lost in traversing through New York. That's what Superman's flight should be like. It should be freeing. Have Superman do tricks, let him do spins and twirls to make the flying around more dynamic, instead of just watching him fly. Anyone with the power of flight would have fun with it. That applies to us gamers, and especially to our humble farm boy. It can be mellow for a moment, but swift within a nanosecond when you need to save the day. For powers and abilities, I think we should have the basics down. Super strength is a given, and you can already do a lot with that to progress through areas and combat. Give it a variation of attacks and we're set. Heat vision and freeze breath can be used for both exploration and encounters, but maybe we can incorporate them more fluidly in a similar way to Batman in Arkham Knight. Have Superman quick-fire these abilities to incapacitate enemies by heating their guns or freezing them in place. The Arkham series did a good job of balancing fast-paced action and calculated stealth sections, but Superman isn't really a stealth hero. He's more of a bust into a wall kind of guy, like the Kool-Aid Man. I have to give credit to Troy Aboyo for this one because it's a terrific idea. Go watch his video over on his channel. He suggested that instead of stealth sections, there can be breach sequences to immobilize a group of armed enemies holding hostages. You can plan it out using your X-ray vision and super hearing, and execute it with super speed similar to the Fear multi-takedown. Notice how I emphasized immobilize? Yeah, it should be a given that Superman should not kill. So maybe when he does breach a room, it shouldn't look like this. That dude dead. I'm still on the fence whether or not to give Superman a life bar or give it to the city, because it would be interesting to have the city rely on your protection. However, at the same time, I would also like to have Superman not be totally in— Oh, would you stop it with that? As I was saying and so graciously fighting for earlier, it also makes sense to give Superman a health bar like Kratos to have some stakes in the game. If we do give Superman a health bar, I think it makes sense that his healing factor is featured, similar to the X-Men Origins Wolverine video game. While in a fight, Logan's healing factor is slowed down, but it's much faster after you clear everyone out. You could probably do the same with Superman, but maybe add a feature where he recharges his health a lot faster the more sunlight he absorbs. Incorporating these features in a Superman game increases the stakes for you as a player without compromising his powers too much. If we want to have a balanced game where Superman can incapacitate enemies but still be vulnerable to have stakes, there have to be enemy varieties. When facing common thugs, Superman is just completely unfazed, brushing off gunfire as if they were airsoft pellets, and his life bar is all silver as if surrounded by armor. It's a completely different conversation when facing off against special enemies. His life bar would turn the traditional green and get damaged normally. I think a good way to do that is to weave the Intergang into the plot. For those who are unfamiliar, the Intergang is essentially a human crime syndicate who are secretly working with Darkseid to keep tabs on the anti-life equation in exchange for apocalypse and weaponry. Having them around can pose a challenge for Big Blue, and we can probably insert a plot reasoning that all of this is new to him because he's only ever faced regular criminals to add shock value. I keep pulling ideas from Spider-Man, but you gotta admit that those games have the most balanced enemies and entertaining sequences. Every boss fight is a spectacle, and with Superman's colorful villains, there's a lot you can do with them in a game. Spider-Man 2 has a memorable opening scene with a giant Sandman, and you can probably do something with a generic kaiju or possibly a humongous mech piloted by Toyman or controlled by Luthor. While all this is exciting, I think what the Spider-Man series also did well was give players some downtime with missions where you play as Peter or Miles. Heck, even MJ. I might be the minority here, but these sections are entertaining in their own right. Getting Clark Kent right is just as important in capturing the Superman essence. Although it may not seem like it, Superman and Clark Kent are one and the same. In various iterations of the comics, Clark becomes a news reporter to keep his ear in the ground and to have more awareness in the world so he'd know when and where he's needed.
Well, Lois, the truth is I'm actually Superman in disguise, and I only pretend to be a journalist in order to hear about disasters as they happen and then squeeze you out of the byline.
You're a sick man, Kent.
Maybe there can be a mission where Clark is incognito, listening in on conversations for a scoop. Or maybe a mission where Lois and Jimmy investigate a LexCorp facility to gather evidence to help bring Lex Luthor to jail. I think it'd be a nice change of pace to incorporate these segments in the game because it can push the plot forward and show that Clark Kent and the Daily Planet staff can make a difference just as much as Superman does. Again, with the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'd like to pull from Spider-Man, but with Miles Morales this time. The side missions were a great addition to the game that gave a whole new meaning to friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. There should be a great emphasis on Superman being a friend, including missions where he helps the community can help convey that. Sometimes he just helps a kid get her kitty down a tree, or assists an old lady crossing the street, or just be there for a stranger who just needs someone to listen to. Superman doesn't always have to punch a bad guy or face world-ending threats. If done right, these missions will be a great addition that completes the Superman experience. These missions will, of course, all depend on the story. But I think for us to have a well-rounded Superman game, we need to accept the Clark Kent side of Superman too. Just please, don't make me fly through hoops. It's not entirely impossible to make a Superman game. If Warner Brothers wanted it, they could produce a game. Maybe not with their current track record, but fans have been begging and pleading for a Superman game. And Warner Brothers is more than capable of producing a stellar AAA game. Veering away from live service or other video game trends and prioritizing what the fans want can lead them to success. It's been 20 years since the last Superman solo title, and with James Gunn's Superman finally out in theaters, people will be more hyped to get their hands on a Superman game. It's time, Warner Brothers. With a passionate creative team and proper direction, there just might be hope for Superman. That's all we have for Gaming Backlog. If it's still not obvious enough, we love our superhero games. So tell us, what do you want to see in a Superman game? Which superhero do you think deserves their own game? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more gaming news, updates, and deep dives, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time, thanks for watching, and don't forget to look up.